and be authentic in how they are and how they go about. All right, so one of my pet hates is how people just pretend that other languages does not exist. And I am attempting to employ principles of translanguaging into my research, while playing the publication game, of course. Okay, and I mentioned the possibilities that comes with technologies. But this is an example of a student's work. I hope you can see it. He's Ethiopian. I don't know. Anybody from Ethiopia there? Yeah? No. Yeah, they can't afford to travel here. They will anyway not get a visa. He interviewed people, and he engaged with society, a beautiful study, and he wrote in Amharic. Now, I don't know Amharic, but I think it's quite beautiful to look at. So I said to him, listen, we've got to validate your language. Yeah, you're getting the degree in English, but we've got to validate your language. So we included the abstract in Amharic at the front. He thanked the people in Amharic, and we included Amharic as well as the translated versions. It was our little attempt to just validate the person, the people that he interviewed and he engaged with. Of course, one examiner wrote back and said, it's really troublesome to see all these things that he or she doesn't understand. I think it was him. It's really just wasting space, and he suggested we remove all of that, which of course we did not do. And now it's standard procedure. This is another example. He's from the Eastern Cape. He speaks isiXhosa. And instead of just translating it, we try to actually use the words as part of the sentences. So if you read that, starting on the 4th line, and he's got a funny way of referring to his participants. He said, that person also confirmed this, as he said, Abatwana, Bafumana, and I even can't read the rest, which means, and then we translate. Can you see how we're incorporating isiXhosa into the writings? But of course then, when you try to publish this, first of all, they don't allow colors, which I don't understand because all the publications nowadays are anyway electronic, so just allow me to use colors. But then also, word count, as if pages are costing anything. Anyway, this is just an example of principles of translanguaging, because I do think every little bit that we do to promote other languages and authentic languages and original languages into our writing, I think we scored a point there. Right. But it's not just that, it's also the meaning in language. The fact that we think language absolutely says it all. And Derrida in this sense said, what cannot be said above all must not be silenced, but written. But I argue, it sometimes cannot be written, but it can be created in other ways, which we need to do. And I think this was my point in time where I crossed from an ontology of human rights thinking to an ontology of being flat. I don't think we can claim equality. I think we will ever be able to claim equality, but we can at least try to get rid of superiority in thinking. And the world of post-qualitative, post-human being opened up for me without me really understanding much of what I'm reading. I mean, I asked a friend, that same friend who helped me here, I sent her to a conference, a workshop on post-humanism. And I asked her to write a report. And this is an extract from the report. Now, you know what reports look like, no? Boring pages that nobody reads. This is really just an extract from the report. So there's other ways of writing, apart from how publications and journals expect us to write. We don't have to write like other people. And in a PhD, you're not bound by the silly rules of journals. So just be creative and be authentic and just understand that there's other ways of expression, even beyond words, that we can do. The other thing that I really encourage you is the lens that you put on. Instead of a binary lens, instead of a deficit lens, instead of focusing on mistakes and faults and inferiority, put on appreciative lens and appreciate people and context for what they are, as valid beings, as valid places, as valid people with valid opinions, in spite of the language, the race, the culture, the space on the planet, etc., etc., etc. And find ways in your studies to overcome binary thinking and to recognize the entanglement of place, politics, time, ontology, language, culture, class, and everything else that comes with it. In a recent chapter that will be published, it's been accepted, it's with the proofreaders, we sent in this as our explanation of our participants. Springer didn't want to publish it because they don't like the colors. It costs too much. Anyway, so what I want you to understand is that the global north, and you understand the global north as being the west, not the physical north, dominates knowledge and knowledge production. And we, as travelers, come to your space. Some people stay. Some of you came from elsewhere and are now staying in the UK. But the rest of us go back. And it's always nice to go back home as well. All right. But we are bound by the Western ways of publication and research to such an extent. If you look at the size of the green as compared to the size of the blue, the size of the green is really much bigger. The world outside the UK is really much bigger, but even UK, Western Europe, North America. The world is really much better. And most people are on the margins. They are on the borders. They're there, out there. Some do travel across and others just stay away. But the territory of knowledge is situated in the global north. And you can either choose to be comfortable with that, or you can choose to disrupt that. And I hope I've inspired you somewhat to disrupt that. But in that chapter, and this is very much green, this is part of our conclusion, where we say that Western epistemology has shaped African, and I cannot talk about as if I'm a South American, I'm not, has shaped African diasporans' ontology by its domination of knowledge, authority, economy, and etc. to such an extent that when people come from the borderlands and they come into the territory, they convert. Yes, they dress differently, they will share their food that's different and so on, but in the end, they just accept largely the epistemology that is dominating the world. And unless we find a way to disrupt it, I don't know where it was. But this was an attempt from me. I did a project with Catherine and Alan. Alan, is Alan still here? Alan, were you part of this writing? I can't remember. Yes, you were. Okay, so we were in the project, and I'm aware that I'm most perfect over time. Okay, I'm nearly finished. We were in a project, or we are in a project with 10 universities. Okay, Coventry is one, University of the Free State is one, research institutions. Then we have universities of technology, or what do they call them? Polytechs, or whatever else, or applied sciences. Then we have rural South African universities. And rural South African universities stems from apartheid times. So if you go there, it very much still looks like a school. The people there have internalized their inferiority. So they don't attempt to do research, and they defend that choice. So we went in, and I wanted to create a paper where deficits doesn't count. So early in the career I said, okay, so let's just do appreciative inquiry instead of the normal standard. And I don't know if any of you have ever read about appreciative inquiry. Immediately, it was, how can you not be critical? That was the immediate thinking. How can we do science without being critical? And I said, you can still be critical, but you can appreciate instead of find fault. And I do think that made a shift in how people saw themselves. Because if you look for all the things that you don't have, as compared to the potential of working what you have, it's a complete different mindset. Secondly, in writing the paper, instead of interpreting their work, I simply used different authors' work and I weaved it together to collate a paper. So you can see hardly anything is written in black. That is what I interpreted. It's literally the words of the different people. And I'm still amazed that it was published and it was published in color. And these were our findings. You see findings? Yeah, words are useful, but it doesn't just have to be in words. You can use color, you can use the image. That is, by the way, Ikudu, and the project is the Ikudu project. It's a large animal. But you can do so much more than just using words. And of course, it's not the end. And then, and perhaps, and I forgot to put the date, I think it was 2016, perhaps if you have time and I can share the paper, you can research also needs a bit of activism. Because the world will not change unless we become activists. And most probably you know about the Rhodes Was Fall movement in South Africa, where students were complaining about the very colonial University of the Cape Town, with Rhodes sitting, gazing out over the shacks of people living in terrible conditions. And the students started complaining about the Rhodes, and first of all they covered Rhodes, so that he was just in plastic, and then Rhodes was removed. And then one of the students replaced Rhodes. She sat there. And you can see at the back, there old Rhodes is going away. And she sat in that position for a couple of hours to express her own being. And that is a form of protest, but it is a form of validating yourself in terms of who you are. And how do we use authentic moments such as that to do research? How do we move beyond words, beyond language, to really and truly understand and validate and appreciate differences of being and knowing? I think I need to stop here. I've been carrying on, and I will carry on like forever, but I hope I've given you some food for thought, and I'm looking very much forward to hearing